Beijing has announced it is severing ties with the U.S. on a number of diplomatic fronts in response to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan. According to NBC, Chinese officials say they will cancel phone calls between regional military commanders, defense meetings, talks on maritime safety, and on climate change. China will also end cooperation with the USA on anti-drug efforts, returning illegal immigrants, or undocumented immigrants, and transnational crime.
All right, Katie, so you caught this story just actually almost as we were wrapping. Tell us what stands out to you here.
What stands out to me here is that this is exactly what critics of Pelosi were talking about and were warning against, which was that this was going to be, rightly so, seen as a provocation. This was going to be something that would undermine cooperation between the United States and China. And anyone, we were talking about this earlier with Stoller, his piece about how we need to get a more efficient military, basically, right? So we can be prepared to fight China. And for me, part of security is climate change, for instance. Part of security is having diplomacy, having cooperation, discussions with leaders in China. And so I don't see how anyone can think that what Pelosi did makes the world any safer, makes America safer, puts us in a better position. I thought that this was stupid when she did it. I thought it would be seen as provocative. And anyone, really, regardless of your political position, I think should be nervous about this.
I don't think this was what Nancy Pelosi wanted to happen, whereas I think if somebody from the Republican Party had done it, it would have been perhaps to goad exactly this response out of China. And honestly, I would have a totally different opinion on that. But given that I think this was a strategic kind of blunder from Pelosi and from the Biden administration, I think she walked into something that she should have been anticipating, but that she wasn't. Now, counterintuitively, I actually think there's an argument this is good because it shocks the United States into the realization that this diplomatic relationship, however that we want to preserve it, it's really going to be almost impossible to preserve in the short term.
Right.
And so if we want to deal with the massive influx of fentanyl that's shipped from China to Mexico and then ravages American communities, we're probably going to have to do it without those diplomatic ties. Those are going to end sooner than later. Sadly, whether or not that's ideal, it's reality.
That's funny because I see it as almost the opposite. And when you said it was going to shock America, I was like, oh yeah, maybe this will be good. Now the United States will realize that they can't just do whatever they want without provoking a response. So for me, I think that I don't know why, I still don't know exactly why Pelosi did this. I think that
legacy building, right?
Legacy building maybe, or really wanting to get kind of the USA militarism vote, try to get that away from Republican voters. But I do think that it really has backfired. And I do think it is funny how you and I had the exact opposite. Because for me, the takeaway is not we can't have diplomacy inherently with China. It's that we can't do stuff like this because it undermines diplomacy. And we're not going to be able to do the things we want to do, whether it comes from security, fentanyl, climate change, which is is a security issue. We're not going to be able to do that without cooperation with China.
It's interesting because, so John Kerry has made this argument as the climate czar who goes to China, and reporters have asked him, why aren't you confronting China on the question of slave labor or treatment of the Uyghur Muslims, for instance? And John Kerry says, basically in his response, he's like, well, we will get nothing done on climate if we push those buttons. And I guess what's interesting about our different perspectives on this is mine is that there's no way, the Chinese government is so sensitive now that pushing those buttons, if we want to have a leg to stand on in the United States, is going to be virtually impossible. And at some point, China is going to sever the relationship anyway. But a good sort of counter argument to what I just said and something on your side is that China's economy is not as strong as some people probably think it is. They do need us to some extent too.
Right. Yeah, and I think that we are seeing, with Russia, which is whose economy we're much less integrated with. That had major ramifications. With the sanctions with Putin. So and obviously Americans are paying for that. And it would be so much worse with China if something comparable to that happened. So I do think that maybe the takeaway from this is that, and I think China has used a lot of military restraint, but I do think that this I actually think is almost a smart move from China, because I think, to me at least, they look like rational actors who are responding to something that was very provocative, but they're responding in a way that's level-headed and not rash and not purely symbolic, unlike Pelosi. So to me, they seem like the adults in the room.
Katie and I are going to go settle this debate out on the streets of DC.
Yeah,
we'll be
definitely,
asking, if you're here, you might see us. We're going to go ask the public. We're going to take a referendum on the street.
Yeah, referendum on the street. Yeah. Taking it to the streets.
It's coming. It's coming. Be on the lookout for us, because we're asking these questions.
Yeah.
It's just like when Jay Leno used to go into the
We
streets.
should do that. Yeah.
And a lot of people, I've heard this before, they say Katie Halper is the Jay Leno of the left.
Yeah, they do say that. Yeah.
I've heard that so many times I can't even tell you.
I know. Me too. If I had a penny, I'd be as rich as Jay Leno.
If only. If only. Well, that does it for us today. Katie, it was so great to have you here. This was an absolute blast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I've only known you sort of virtually as like top up to head. And it's great you have a full body.
Yes. Not to be ableist, but
Right. Well, no, but like you're more than just you're more than just a talking head, literally.
Yeah. Right.
So congrats on that, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. We got confirmation.
Yes. Well, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're also available anywhere you listen to podcasts and on the Plex TV app. That's new, so make sure you check it out. It's been, like I just said, an absolute blast to be here with you, Katie. We hope you all have a great, safe weekend, and we'll be back with more Rising Fridays next Tuesday. No, I'm kidding. Next Friday. Nailed it. I'm the Jay Leno of the right.
You are.
Why don't people say that?
Because I take up too much oxygen with my comparison, yeah.
That's right. Well, now we know.